So I just wanted to talk a bit here and expand upon something that I just spoke about a little bit in a video on my main channel, which was about the US election, upcoming US election. And I made the point in that video that a lot of people in the West, and the US in particular, just don't conceive of the monsters who their politicians are as monsters, right? They don't actually conceive of them as criminals or monsters at all. They rather treat them like sort of well-meaning buffoons who are just making an honest mistake every now and again by, doing a genocide here and there or something like that. So I wanted to go over basically the quintessential example of this, and also go over the way in which others who are not as much of an example of this still nonetheless fall into it. So obviously the quintessential example of this has to be Vaush, who, by the way, is a pedophile. He outed himself as one. He showed his collection of drawn cheese pizza on stream quite a while ago. Merits mentioning that anytime that you mention him, just so that no one thinks that I'm letting him off easily. Now, Vaush just recently made a video called "A Video for the Liberals in My Audience," which is really fucking ironic, given that every single thing that he does is unconditional support for the mainstream of the Democratic Party, who are obviously a liberal party, and support for whichever candidate they put out, no matter who they are, no matter how liberal they are, trying to, guilt people into voting for them, telling them to vote for them no matter what, even if they're doing genocide, blah, blah, blah. He is a liberal. And it is insane that he genuinely still tries to project an image otherwise, and that he accuses others of being liberals. Like, it couldn't be more of a joke. But he's the quintessential example of this sort of tendency that I'm talking about. Basically, for people like him, genocide is like an unfortunate side thing that you can largely ignore. He has made dozens upon dozens upon dozens of videos talking about how epic and based he thinks like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are. Like, just search for Vaush Kamala, the first thing that pops up you can see immediately. You can tell immediately what this video is going to be about. She's laughing, there's an upwards trending green graph. Isn't Kamala awesome? Things are looking great for her. God, I love her so much. Shame about the genocide thing though. Kamala's best speech yet, that is his reaction to her speech at the DNC. Massive win, he says. Like, this is almost entirely absurdly positive coverage, just totally playing her up as someone awesome and epic and based. He did this same thing with Biden too, after Biden won in 2020, including after Biden began assisting in Israel's genocide after October 7th. And just look at the way that he frames this. Biden's handling of Israel keeps getting worse. Like, he's just sort of mishandling it, right? It's insane the way that this stuff is framed. Can you imagine someone saying, like, Hitler's handling of the Holocaust is getting worse. Hitler's handling of the Eastern situation. Like, it's just so weird the way they frame this. It comes off as absurdly weird to anyone who's not a part of, like, the Western cult. To anyone who sees these genociders for the genociders who they actually are. They really do just sort of treat the atrocities of their leaders as, like, this unfortunate side thing, as I said, something that can largely be ignored. Meanwhile, they praise basically everything else they do. Look at his videos on Kamala Harris, for example. As I went over at the beginning of this video, Kamala Harris, presently the vice president of a government committing genocide, has pretty much pledged to continue the genocide in every way, shape, and form, has done absolutely nothing to stop it. She's on board, right? At this point, there's no fucking way that you can claim that she's some sort of closeted anti-genocider who's just waiting to get into power to stop it. She is an enthusiastic participant in the genocide, an enthusiastic participant of Israel in general. Like, look, could you imagine someone uploading a video about Adolf Hitler with Hitler in the foreground and the word based 4 times in the background? No? Then why do you do it for Kamala Harris? Genocider. Absolutely guilty of genocide. She would be in jail if she got any sort of fair trial that she was subject to the justice she deserves to be. She'd be in jail for her entire life 10 times over. But they just talk about them like they're the most normal fucking thing in the world. As I said, it really comes off as like praising Adolf Hitler's economic policy and then just being like in a little asterisk at the end saying like, shame about the whole Jew thing though. And I know that some of you who are idiotic Americans will say, oh, but you can't just compare everything to Hitler. What can we compare them to then? They're doing fucking genocide right now. They're doing a racial genocide against Palestinians, which they also generally like to extend to people in general all around the world, especially from the third world. And they're doing it and they're supporting it because they believe that overall in the bigger picture, what they're doing here is good for the USA. It's a Nazi mentality. We kill these people for our benefit. And when you're willing to just say, well, these people are better for me, it's just such a shame that all these other people have to suffer for that, and just brush it off like it's nothing. You are a Nazi. You have the same mentality of a Nazi. Because American imperialism, keeping these people under your boot, benefits you. So you're super willing to just brush it off and treat it as some sort of side thing that you can ignore while praising them for the other things they do that might benefit you and yours, as if those things aren't intrinsically intertwined. And it's not just Vaush. Hasan Piker, who is, his fans have made sure to let us know that he's extremely anti-Israel, he's extremely pro-Palestine, but even he still makes videos praising Kamala Harris, who has been an enthusiastic participant in genocide for almost a year now, like treating the rest of her policies as if they're not intertwined with American imperialism, treating them as if they can just be like sort of isolated, basically treating a genocider as someone normal, treating the genocide as just sort of a side thing. If you couldn't imagine someone praising some other genociders' policies in the middle of them committing a genocide, why do you just give this a pass? These people are monsters and you need to treat them as monsters. Like, look at this shit, come on. You guys have to treat these people as the monsters who they are. Because if you don't properly conceive of them as the monsters who they are, if you keep treating them as if they're just like normal everyday politicians who have awesome policies, and then it's a shame about the one thing they're doing in Gaza that is a little bit bad, then you're never ever going to conceive of them in the way that you actually need to defeat them. Because you don't beat these people by talking about how awesome one aspect of them is and then just being like, oh, but there's also the genocide. Sucks about that. A genocider is defined by the genocide. That's who they are. That's who they'll always be. If these were like third world leaders who committed atrocities, you guys would have no problem conceiving of them as monsters. And if you saw anyone talking about how good their economic policy, a lot of you would be totally enraged about that. But you see your favorite YouTuber talking about how epic and awesome Kamala Harris's economic policy is while she's enthusiastically participating in fucking genocide. And you don't see any issue with that. It's because you do not conceive of them as the monsters who they are. And that speaks to how you conceive of their victims and really just latent racism or outright full-blown racism that you hold. And I also don't doubt the fact that for a lot of you, it's simply, as I said, about the fact that just like for Nazis, a lot of it is about the fact that, you know, what's being done to these people, you acknowledge, and you deep down, regardless of how much you'll argue against it, you realize that it benefits you in some way. And for you, if the Democrats are giving you this bargain where they'll slaughter people on the other side of the world but make things marginally better for you, you'll take that every time, because at the end of the day, those people on the other side of the world are simply not human. I'm not even going to say not fully human, because for you, they're just not human at all. For you, it's like the same thing as like factory farming. Like if that's what's necessary to get the beef onto your plate, you're okay with it. If the slaughter of Palestinians is what's necessary to get, you know, some student loan forgiveness from Kamala Harris or whatever, you're happy with that. So, you know, you might want to interrogate these parts of you, these parts of who you are. Or if you're not going to interrogate them, at least admit them. At least stop pretending that you're something that you aren't. You know, someone like Vaush has a brand to maintain where he just has to pretend to be a socialist all the time while literally advocating for liberalism and liberals constantly, endlessly, doing nothing else ever and scolding anyone who doesn't do that. But I would at least hope the people in his audience and others, like Hasan's fans, for example, who give him a pass for glossing up Kamala Harris all the time for what he and others seem to conceive of as her non-Gaza related policies, then yeah, I just hope that you might have some level of introspection to realize that you probably shouldn't praise genociders for anything. Like, you know, the ISIS meme, you don't ever gotta hand it to him. That really applies way more to American politicians than anyone else. So maybe stop handing it to the genociders. That's all I wanted to say. See ya.